question a lot of people have is, how do I spread my testimony? How do I tell my testimony? Because everyone who has been born again and is following Jesus Christ has a testimony, but sometimes it's difficult to know how to spread it and how to tell people about it and what to say. So in this video, I'll just give you some pointers, some basic, short, simple pointers of what you can do when spreading your testimony. So start off with what you were like before you found Christ, before you came to Christ. For some people, that was most of their life. For some people, before they came to Christ was not that long. It was just a few years, and then they came to Christ. But no matter what it is, Jesus works all things for his good, and no matter what your testimony is, you can see the Holy Spirit at work in it. So just tell what you were like before. And remember, don't go into per se depth about all these, just some basic things of your testimony. You don't need to spend 1,000 years on each point. You don't want to bore people to death, but I always say for that first part, talking about what you were like before Christ, don't spend as much time talking about that, because that just shows how glorifies Satan. You don't want to show how horrible you were before Christ. You do, but you don't want to go in depth and say this is this, and then spend 2 minutes on what Christ did for you afterwards. You want the main focal point to be on what Jesus has done in your life. So after you talk about what you were like before you came to Christ, talk about how you realized you needed Christ. Maybe someone spread the gospel to you. Maybe you just were reading the Bible one day that you found in your basement and you realized, oh wait, I need salvation. Maybe you went to church. No matter what it is, however you realized you needed Christ, tell them that. Then after that, tell them how you received Christ, what you did. Did you go up to the altar? Was it just you were in your bed and all of a sudden Jesus encountered you? Was it you were walking in a park and you just felt the Holy Spirit saying, okay, now's the time? Whatever it was, just tell them how you came to Christ. And then afterwards, tell them what your life is like now that you accepted Christ, what he's done in your life, how you've had boldness, how you've had sin removed, how you've been able to follow him, how you've had supernatural power. Just whatever just happened after you started following Christ, tell them that and spend a lot of time on that to show the power of the Holy Spirit. And whenever you're telling your testimony, some things to keep in mind is, one, it always glorifies Jesus. In Revelation 19, it says the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So, one, that means when you're telling your testimony, keep in mind that you're declaring, you're prophesying, you're saying what God has done in my life, he can do it in yours also. And another thing is the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So that also means that anything that you're speaking is going to glorify Jesus. Whenever you prophesy, it's going to glorify Jesus. Whenever you're telling your testimony, it should be glorifying Jesus. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So that one verse has those two different meanings. So when you're prophesying, keep that in mind too, that it's always going to be glorifying Jesus. It's not going to take people's eyes off Jesus and on you or on someone else. Then another thing to keep in mind when you're spreading your testimony is it is powerful, because in Revelation chapter 12 verse 11 it also says they overcame the devil, Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and because they did not love their lives to the death. So one of the ways we overcome Satan is by telling our testimony. We declare to the spiritual realm when we're speaking that Satan has no power, he is lost, Jesus has won, he has defeated the grave, he has saved me, and he can save every single person who chooses to turn to him. So when you're telling your testimony, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And when you're telling your testimony, remember, you're defeating Satan. You're declaring to Satan that he is lost, and you are doing spiritual warfare. And that's why sometimes it can seem very difficult and hard to tell your testimony. So there's just some things to keep in mind when telling your testimony. If you want to see an example, you can go and watch the video in the description of when I told my testimony. You can see I did those points, what I was like before Christ, how I realized I needed Christ, how I came to Christ, and then what my life has been like after Christ. If you want to go and watch that as an example, but don't ever use someone else's testimony. You tell your testimony, what Christ has done for you, because it is powerful. So I hope this has been helpful. If you know someone who doesn't know how to tell their testimony or sometimes feels fearful, you can send them this video, share this video with them, or if this has helped you, go ahead and like it. I hope it has. And also remember that in John chapter 16, it talks about the Holy Spirit is the helper. He will give us what to say. So when we don't know what to say, he knows what to say. And it says in verse 12, or no, in verse 7, John chapter 16, verse 7, Nevertheless, I tell you the truth, it is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I depart, I will send him to you. So he's the Helper. And then in verses 12 through 15, it talks about he will give us the words to say. He will help us to speak. So when you're telling your testimony, say, Holy Spirit, you speak out of me. And that's all the same when you're spreading the gospel. Ask the Holy Spirit to speak out of you. No matter what you're doing, whenever you're ministering to people, whenever you're spreading the gospel, ask the Holy Spirit to speak out of you, to give you words of knowledge, words of wisdom, prophecy, to just all the gifts of the Spirit, and to just speak out of you, give you strength to. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.